All please rise. Welcome to the 2020 State of Our Judiciary. Presiding Justice of the Appellate Division, 4th Department, Judge Gerald Whalen. Presiding Justice of the Appellate Division, 3rd Department, Judge Elizabeth Gary. Presiding Justice of the Appellate Division, 1st Department, Judge Rolando Acosta. The Chief Administrative Judge of the Unified Court System, Judge Lawrence Marks. The Associate Judges of the New York State Court of Appeals, Judge Jenny Rivera. Judge Leslie Stein. Judge Eugene Fahey. Judge Michael Garcia. Judge Rowan Wilson. Judge Paul Feynman. And the Chief Judge of the State of New York, Judge Janet DiFiore.
Please be seated. So good morning, everyone. Good morning. Lawrence Marks. I'm the Chief Administrative Judge of the courts, and it is my privilege to welcome you to the 2020 State of Our Judiciary. And this is Chief Judge Janet DiFiore's 4th State of Our Judiciary address. We are back here this year at the Court of Appeals, following last year's State of Our Judiciary, which was held in Bronx Supreme Court. So to begin the program, I ask that you please stand. And we welcome a group of students from Bethlehem High School here in the Albany area who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And they are Kirsten Murray, Chris Ramundo, Carolyn Wise, and Nick Zagrosser.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and please remain standing as Court Officer Yolanda Johnson from Westchester Family Court will sing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home
Thank you, Officer Johnson. And that was really kind of an original interpretation. That was great. Please be seated. So I would like to start by recognizing several current and former members of the judiciary, beginning first with the Associate Judges of the Court of Appeals in order of seniority, Judge Jenny Rivera, Judge Leslie Stein, Judge Eugene Fahey, Judge Michael Garcia, Judge Rowan Wilson, and Judge Paul Feinman. Next are the presiding justices of the Appellate Division, Justice Rolando Acosta of the First Department, Justice Elizabeth Gary of the Third Department, and Justice Gerald Whalen of the Fourth Department. Justice Alan Shankman of the Second Department had an appointment out of town this week, could not be here today. With us today are several former Court of Appeals judges, former Chief Judge Jonathan Lippman, former Associate Judge Carmen Siparik, and former Associate Judge Susan Reed. And we are pleased to have two former presiding justices of the Appellate Division here this morning, Betty Weinberg-Ellerin and Karen Peters. And our three Deputy Chief Administrative Judges are here today, Judge George Silver, Deputy Chief Administrative Judge for the New York City Courts, Edwina Mendelson, Deputy Chief Administrative Judge for Justice Initiatives, and Judge Vito Caruso, like that button, Deputy Chief Administrative Judge for courts outside New York City. Also like to recognize Judge Juanita Bing Newton, Dean of our Judicial Institute, Judge Sherry Klein Heitler, who heads our Office of Policy and Planning, and Judge Jeffrey Sunshine, our coordinating judge for matrimonial matters. And we're joined by administrative judges and supervising judges from across the state, as well as a number of appellate and trial judges here today. Turning to the state executive branch, we are pleased to have with us our state's outstanding Attorney General, Letitia James. Along with our equally outstanding State Controller, Tom DiNapoli. And representing the Governor's Office is the Counsel to the Governor, Kamiki Gibson. And I believe we're expecting Special Counsel and Senior Advisor to the Governor, Elizabeth Garvey, as well. Also here is Barbara Underwood, the State Solicitor General. And with us today is the Secretary of State, Rosanna Rosado. Expected. The State Inspector General, Letizia Talia Fierro. And Mike Green, Commissioner of the Division of Criminal Justice Services. And from the legislature, we have Brad Hoylman, Chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I think Jeffrey Dinowitz, Chair of Assembly Judiciary, is expected as well. And we're joined, or we are expecting to be joined by a number of other members of the Senate and the Assembly. The U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of New York, Grant Jaquith, is here today, as are several of our state's district attorneys, David Clegg from Ulster County, Mary Donnelly from Rensselaer County, Anthony Jordan from Washington County, and Madeline Singas from Nassau County. The president of the New York State Bar Association, Henry Greenberg, is with us this morning, as is the president-elect of the State Bar, Scott Carson. And also here are representatives of bar associations from across the state, as well as Dean Alicia Willett of Albany Law School. And I want to mention Matthew Bybin is here, a member of the Commission on Judicial Nomination. So now it is my great honor to introduce our Chief Judge, Janet DiFiore. Over the past 4 years, through sheer determination and incredibly hard work, Chief Judge DiFiore has had a positive impact on virtually every aspect of our state's unified court system. She is a Chief Judge who sets the bar high for all of us as we strive to make New York's justice system function as efficiently and as fairly as possible. The fruits of all those efforts carried out under her leadership are apparent in every jurisdiction and every level of court throughout this state. It is difficult to imagine a Chief Judge more committed to fulfilling the great responsibilities of her important and demanding position. And I remind you that she also carries a full caseload as a member and as Chief Judge of this court. Every one of us is privileged to serve under her leadership, and we are all grateful that we have a Chief Judge in whom all of us can take such great pride. So please join me in welcoming Chief Judge DiFiore as she speaks to us on the state of our judiciary.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the State of Our Judiciary 2020. Thank you all for being here, and a special thank you to the former acting presiding justice of the First Department, Justice Peter Tom. Thank you for being here. And my partner in life and everything that I do, my husband, Dennis Glazer. My daughter, Alexandra Murphy, and the love of my life, Charlotte Jane Murphy, my 6-year-old granddaughter. So one of the greatest highlights of the court year for us is the opportunity to report to our partners in government, to the bar, and to the public on the progress we've made and the challenges we continue to face in our pursuit of excellence in the delivery of justice. Given the short time we have together today, it would be impossible for me to fully address the wide-ranging work and accomplishments that have taken place this year in what has been so aptly described as the largest, the busiest, and the most complex court system in the country. So to supplement my address, we've prepared comprehensive written reports on the state of our judiciary and on the Excellence Initiative, and those reports are available either online or for your reading pleasure outside of the courtroom in hard copy. Today, my plan is to focus relatively briefly on a select number of priorities that are fundamental to the present and future vitality of the New York State courts. Constitutional simplification of the courts, the implementation of presumptive alternative dispute resolution, ADR, and criminal justice reform. It is painfully obvious to all of us that we are living in divided times, but we are, of course, fortunate and blessed to live in a nation that is governed by the rule of law. Every year, millions of difficult and contentious disputes are resolved peacefully in our courts across the nation, and the rulings, orders, and decisions issued in those matters are respected and honored by the litigants, the lawyers who represent them, and the members of the community at large. Respect for the work of our courts is of paramount importance to the functioning of our democratic system of government. And the public's confidence in our ability to administer justice fairly and efficiently is the foundation that enables the judiciary to carry out its mission. And that is why, upon assuming the position of Chief Judge 4 years ago, I placed all of our focus and effort on the Excellence Initiative to improve court operations and provide litigants with the kind of high-quality, timely services that engender and encourage the public's confidence in and respect for our work. Our goal to achieve operational and decisional excellence is the motivating force behind everything we do, including the three-part plan we have developed to improve the long-term performance of our court system. I am proud to say that part one of that plan, the Excellence Initiative, has been, by every measure, a resounding success, thanks to the hard work and commitment of our judges and court staff and the support and cooperation of the bar. We have cut our backlogs dramatically all across the state and have eliminated them entirely in many of our jurisdictions. Our docket of criminal cases, long plagued by systemic, almost intractable delay, is dramatically down across the state. On the civil side of our house, we have been productive and effective as well, cutting backlog in half statewide and eliminating it entirely in many jurisdictions. And all of this has been accomplished within the context of our Excellence Initiative, part one of the plan. Part two of our plan for the future of the New York State courts, developed over the last year and designed to complement and enhance the Excellence Initiative, is presumptive early ADR. And in a moment, I'll have more on ADR and the positive impact we're already seeing on the earliest stages of our implementation. I am extremely proud, and quite frankly, I am inspired by the many ways in which our judges and professional staff have risen to every challenge presented to them under the Excellence Initiative and to every challenge presented during our transition to presumptive ADR. But notwithstanding our successful efforts today, we find that we are still fighting an uphill battle. The processes we have employed to achieve progress under the Excellence Initiative and in planning our presumptive ADR model has opened our eyes to see how much more we could be doing to improve the delivery of justice if we were not forced to operate within the confines of the most complicated, inefficient, and antiquated trial court structure in the entire nation. And I have come to realize that the single greatest barrier to our ability to deliver the kind of timely and efficient justice services the people of this state expect and certainly deserve is the very structure of our court system, a structure that has not been meaningfully updated, although many have tried, in more than half a century. An interesting fact, Article 3 of the Federal Constitution lays out the structure of the entire federal judiciary in 365 words, leaving Congress with the flexibility to make changes in the federal courts to respond to the times we live in. In New York, Article 6 of our state constitution uses over 16,000 words to set forth in mind-numbing detail our rigid trial court structure, a structure that ties our hands and prevents our lawmakers and judicial leaders from taking the steps necessary to adapt our services to the times we live in and the challenges and circumstances that are very different than those that existed decades ago. No state in the country has a court system as complicated or complex as ours. California, with double our population, has a single trial court. We have 11. each with its own jurisdiction, procedures, cultures, and defined staff. Even the most casual observer would agree, given a blank slate upon which to create a new court system, no rational person would ever design the system we have in place today. Our current structure simply does not serve the public well. Our current structure results in more court appearances, higher legal fees, more lost work days, unnecessary child care expenses, additional transportation costs, and unnecessary added stress and frustration for everyone, including and most especially litigants of modest means who can least afford it. There is an urgent need to reform our courts. It is absolutely essential that we set aside politics, set aside parochial notions of elitism and status, and work together to eliminate the harmful vestiges of the past and do what is right for the people of this state, most especially for the people who make up the bulk of our docket: children, families, criminal defendants, small businesses, tenants facing eviction, consumers strangled with debt, and plain old ordinary folks seeking compensation for losses they've suffered or vindication of rights they possess. The litigants who regularly use our court and depend on the presence of an efficient and easy-to-navigate judicial system. And it was with their needs in mind that the final piece of our three-part plan for the future of our court system took shape. On September 25th, 2019, we called for an amendment of Article 6 of the state constitution to consolidate the current confusing patchwork of 11 different trial courts into a simplified three-tiered structure comprised of a statewide Supreme Court, a statewide municipal court, and our existing justice courts. Our proposal will eliminate the artificial barriers and fragmentations which prevent us from managing our courts with true efficiency and will provide greater access to justice. The new structure will assure that families receive coordinated decision-making from one judge in one court. It is not uncommon under our current system for one family to shuttle back and forth between 4 different courts in potentially 4 different buildings before 4 different judges, with or without lawyers to represent them in some or all of those proceedings. This is not a model we are proud of, nor does this model serve the public interest. We have tried in the past to work around our constitutional limitations by crafting solutions, such as integrated domestic violence courts. But these kind of workarounds are not a rational or responsible way to provide critical justice services to our systems, and certainly not the way to operate a $3 billion branch of our state government. What we need is a modern, simplified court system, a system that speeds rather than impedes the resolution of cases. The new system that we have proposed is smart, clean, and will allow us to clear away the clutter and streamline and consolidate our services. It will provide a simplified structure that is easy for litigants to understand and navigate, and will allow us to more efficiently manage our resources. It will ensure that there is a resident elected Supreme Court justice in every county of the state, which is not the case today. It will make the New York City Housing Court a constitutional court and help us eliminate the damaging perception that this court is a second-class forum for those who appear before our housing court judges. The proposal will eliminate the obsolete constitutional cap on the number of Supreme Court justices, and it will relieve us of a responsibility, quite frankly, we don't want. Did you know that we at OCA, Judge Marks and I and other administrative judges, select and appoint more than half of the judges who currently serve on the Supreme Court in New York City, not the electorate? Our proposal will also make it easier for the legislature to establish a badly needed fifth appellate department. And the proposal will improve the diversity of the Supreme Court and of the appellate divisions, especially upstate, by adding more minority and women judges to the Supreme Court bench and to the pool of jurists eligible for appointment to our appellate courts. Recently, we were greatly encouraged when Governor Cuomo, recognizing the urgent need to reform the courts, pledged in his State of the State address to work with us to simplify our structure. And true to his expression of support, the governor has submitted a proposed constitutional amendment as part of his executive budget. We are excited and we are energized by the governor's concrete support, which we believe greatly enhances the likelihood of passage. On behalf of the legislature, Senate Judiciary Chair Brad Hoylman and Assembly Judiciary Chair Jeff Dinowitz held public hearings last November and did an outstanding job of examining the issues and fostering an informative and productive public debate. 35 witnesses testified before the panel, and not at all to our surprise, these witnesses overwhelmingly supported court simplification. And I have personally met and spoken with Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie and Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who each assured me that they will work with us to explore the issues thoroughly, and hopefully our work together will resolve any concerns they may have about reform, and those efforts are already underway. Public support for court simplification has been virtually universal. More than 100 organizations across the state have come out to publicly support the proposal. Bar associations, legal service providers representing people of limited means, victims' rights groups, business organizations, good government groups, along with many others, including editorial boards from all across the state. Why, you ask, this unprecedented public demonstration of support? Because as we heard from many of those who testified at the public hearings, the litigants and the lawyers with real courthouse experiences, the confusion and delay created by our current system ends up re-victimizing families in crisis and victims of abuse. Standing alone, the experiences of those who represent the poorest and most vulnerable litigants in our courts should be enough to compel action to create a better system for all. Recognizing the imperative before us, the 70,000-member New York State Bar Association and the Fund for Modern Courts have jumped to the forefront of the movement to simplify our system, and we thank them for their leadership, their engagement, and their commitment to achieving responsible reform of the courts. Now, candidly, and frankly disappointingly, there are a few groups opposed to simplifying the court system. They come mostly from within our own court family. A small minority of judges worried about losing their status and prerogatives. Union leaders understandably concerned about job security. Some judicial colleagues, as well as others, concerned about change and who raise important concerns about the possible impact of our proposal on judicial diversity. Let me say clearly, this reform was not designed to, is not intended to, and will not disenfranchise any constituency or group. To the contrary, we have taken meticulous care in preparing the proposal, and we have gone out of our way to avoid harm to any group. And as just one example of our intention to focus solely on lawyer and litigant issues, we have adopted a merger-in-place approach in order to preserve the status quo with respect to the sensitive question of how different judges are selected. Those judges who hold elective positions will continue to be elected, and those judges who hold appointive positions will continue to be appointed. Court simplification has nothing to do with politics or with the issues of judicial selection. Court simplification is about creating a modern, accessible, and affordable court system for the benefit of the people we serve. As to our workforce, importantly, we do not intend to reduce our number. No jobs, I repeat, no jobs, not one, will be lost due to court simplification. Frankly, the system is under-resourced, and one of the major benefits of simplification will be to maximize the efficiency and productivity of the resources now at our disposal. And what could be more important to our institution than fostering judicial diversity on the bench and in court leadership positions across the state? Our demonstrated commitment to diversity is evidenced by the fact that during my tenure as Chief Judge, we have appointed the most diverse judicial leadership team in the history of our state courts. Once again, every initiative and every new approach we pursue is about building the public's trust and confidence in the work of a strong and independent judiciary, and we best accomplish that goal by creating a judiciary that reflects the rich ethnic and cultural diversity of the people of this state. I know that, I understand that, and under my leadership, we have acted on that. Finally, reform will not meaningfully impact our budget. We anticipate that the total cost expended in return for the enormous improvements in services, efficiency, and productivity will be approximately 1/2 of 1%, Mr. Comptroller, 1/2 of 1% of our judiciary operating budget, a cost we can and will absorb within our annual budget. Change is never easy, and no proposal to reorganize so massive and sprawling a system as ours can please everyone. And I, along with all those motivated for this reform, are smart enough to know that a first cut of any proposal for reform of this kind can never anticipate every possible, relevant, or responsible concern. That said, we have solicited, and we will continue to solicit, any and all constructive suggestions from the executive, the legislature, the bar, the bench, and the stakeholder communities that will make our proposal better, stronger, and more likely to achieve first and second passage in the legislature, followed by the ultimate approval of the electorate. We are fortified and we are guided by the principle that our system does not exist for the convenience of any one group. Our court system exists for the benefit of the millions of New Yorkers we serve. This effort is about putting the public first. It is about operating a justice system for the benefit of litigants and lawyers who depend on us for the critical services that only we can provide and that we are constitutionally obligated to deliver. I look forward to working with Governor Cuomo, Majority Leader Stewart-Cousins, and Speaker Hasty to bring about this much-needed reform for the benefit of the people of the state of New York. And while we work hard to accomplish court reform, we will continue to carry out our work as the third branch of government. And to that point, I move now to criminal justice reform. On January 1st, a series of major reforms took effect in New York, including elimination of cash bail for most misdemeanors and felonies, an overhaul of our criminal discovery laws, and new speedy trial mandates. Kudos to Governor Cuomo, Majority Leader Stewart-Cousins, and Speaker Hasty and their legislative colleagues for their bold leadership to make New York's criminal justice system fairer and more equitable for everyone. At the heart of their effort is bail reform. Cash bail, under the general mandate of the former law, has proven to be inherently discriminatory for people of limited means, and it has been revealed that Black, brown, and poor people have been disproportionately harmed by a bail system that routinely kept them in jail simply because they could not afford to pay their way out. While defendants with financial means to secure their freedom returned to their communities, defendants unable to pay cash bail faced the prospect of losing their jobs and having their families and their lives torn apart while they sat in jail waiting sometimes for years for their cases to proceed through the criminal justice system. The new reform legislation was enacted to correct this unfairness by eliminating cash bail in most cases and sharply limiting its use to those cases where it is absolutely necessary to ensure a defendant's return to court. History has taught us that any time responsible leaders undertake enormous change, there will always be, in any discipline, consequences that were not or could not have been anticipated, and certainly consequences that were never intended. As the public discourse on bail unfolds and our leaders and stakeholders come together to examine the impact of our efforts, I am confident that any identified unintended consequences of this sea change in criminal justice can and will be addressed. And I will continue to be a part of the process and the dialogue aimed at protecting and perfecting bail reform by advocating for the restoration of judicial discretion. At this moment, New York, alone in the nation, does not allow judges the discretion to consider the critically important factor of whether or not a defendant poses a credible risk of danger to an identified person or group of persons. I believe that without compromising the purity of its purpose, the new legislation can be amended and strengthened to recognize a narrow exception allowing judges, after a full and fair adversarial hearing, to detain a defendant in those few and extraordinary cases where such a credible threat exists. Eliminating judicial discretion to fashion an effective securing order for a defendant in those limited circumstances is counterproductive to the cause of reform. And what has been overlooked in the debate over bail reform is the fact that New York's judges had already drastically cut back on the imposition of cash bail in recent years. According to the New York City Criminal Justice Agency, the percentage of cases in which cash bail was set dropped from 48% in 1990 to 23% in 2018, and 76% of defendants were released without money bail in 2018, well above the national average of 50%. As a result, the jail population in New York City has been shrinking steadily, and the number of defendants being held in pretrial detention is now at the lowest level it has been in decades. Clearly, we were right in the middle of a major cultural change in which our judges were using their discretion to dramatically reduce the use of bail. This was a very conscious cultural change, a change that grew out of access to increased data and a better understanding and, quite frankly, a better concern about the injustice caused by reflexive bail practices. That said, none of us can shy away from accepting responsibility for the historic over-reliance on bail, which impacted so many lives and did so little to improve public safety in our state. But at the same time, we must not lose sight of the ultimate goal here, which is to craft a more equitable and effective criminal justice system that balances the rights of defendants with the protection of victims of crime and the community at large. That goal cannot be accomplished if judges are rendered powerless to devise the best securing orders for those very few individuals who have been shown to pose a credible risk of danger to an identifiable person or group of persons. We are committed to assisting the legislature and the governor going forward by doing our part to make sure that judges receive the training, tools, and meaningful options they need to appropriately limit pretrial detention to the narrow category of cases where it is absolutely necessary. The leaders of our policymaking branches of government deserve our gratitude and our respect for acting to correct the acknowledged inequities in our criminal justice system. But there is, of course, more work to be done. By adopting sensible guidelines to help our judges in exercising their authority and discretion wisely and justly, the public will be assured that they have rightly placed their faith and confidence in all of us to do the right thing. And speaking for my judicial colleagues presiding in criminal courts across the state, we very much want to be a part of that dialogue and contribute our knowledge and experience to help achieve a resolution that leads us to what we all want, a more equitable and effective criminal justice system for all New Yorkers. We stand ready to assist in every way that we can. Now, on the operational side of the equation, the new criminal justice reforms are having an impact on case management. Our judges, true to form, are retooling and refocusing on actively managing cases on the front end to meet early discovery deadlines. We began preparing for these reforms long before they took effect. Our administrative judge of the New York City Criminal Court, Tomiko Amaker, and Suffolk County Administrative Judge Randy Hinrichs did an absolutely outstanding job of leading the team of judges, lawyers, and staff who worked to ensure that all of us were thoroughly trained and prepared for our new responsibilities. Thank you, Judges Amaker and Hinrichs, for your leadership and for your continuing oversight and monitoring. Thank you very much. Wherever the ongoing public debate on criminal justice reform may take us, every New Yorker can be assured that we are working together in their best interest. And again, I want to thank the governor, the majority leader, and the Speaker of the Assembly for their absolutely incredible vision and for their leadership. Now, staying on the criminal side of our House for a moment longer, as someone who devoted most of my professional career to the criminal justice system, my commitment to reform embraces every facet of the system. And I know firsthand how unnecessary delay in case processing, and particularly in pretrial detention, often begets dire consequences for defendants and their families, and how that reality has driven the movement and the passion for bail reform. When I returned to the bench as Chief Judge, I was deeply disturbed to learn that charged defendants were being held in pretrial detention, mainly on Rikers Island, awaiting trial in cases that were pending for over 3, 5, and even 8 years. Along with prosecutors and defense counsel, our court shared responsibility for that untenable state of delay. Last January, in response, we launched our New York City Special Term Additional Resources Team, our START program. 4 absolutely extraordinary and experienced trial judges volunteered for a special initiative, stepping out of their regular court assignments and working hard to resolve the oldest felony cases involving jailed defendants pending in New York City. Our 4 judges, Fernando Camacho, John Carter, James McCarty, and Barry Warritt, together with District Attorneys Vance, Clark, Gonzalez, Brown, and McMahon, the defense bar in each of those counties, and our court staff did an absolutely spectacular job. In the Bronx, in less than 3 months, the team disposed of 250 serious felony cases involving defendants awaiting trial on charges, most of which had been pending for more than 2 years. And Judge Warritt then went on to dispose of another 350 serious felony cases in New York and Kings County in less than 6 months. Think about that. Literally hundreds and hundreds of defendants detained on Rikers Island, awaiting trial for years. And with a shift and reassignment of resources, we were able to resolve those cases and move those defendants off Rikers Island in a few short months. And as important, we were able to give the victims and their families the finality that will hopefully bring some measure of comfort to them. Just think of what can be done when we achieve reform and simplification of our courts through a permanent model of constitutional change. Finally, notwithstanding the great improvements made recently in the quality of our public defense system, and thank you, I see Bill Leahy out in the audience, our state relies on hundreds of private lawyers appointed by the courts to represent indigent criminal defendants, children, and other family court litigants. The lawyers who serve on these 18B and Attorney for the Child panels have not received an increase in their compensation since the year 2004, over 15 years ago, when rates were fixed at $75 an hour for felonies and representation of children, and $60 an hour for misdemeanors. Across the state, we are experiencing a major exodus from our assigned counsel panels. As 18B and Attorney for the Child compensation rates have stagnated, it has become increasingly difficult to recruit and retain experienced lawyers willing to provide these critical services. This is a crisis that cannot be ignored, not if we want to ensure that indigent criminal defendants are accorded their constitutional right to counsel, and not if we want to ensure that the rights of children are protected when their safety and welfare are at stake. Accordingly, along with our colleagues in the bar, we have pledged to work with and support the legislature and the executive in achieving an appropriate adjustment in the rates of compensation of 18B lawyers and attorneys for children. We look forward to this long overdue recognition of their skill and their service. Leaving criminal justice and shifting now to the civil side of our docket, we have embraced the recommendation of our ADR Advisory Committee and have adopted presumptive early ADR as a standard component of our civil case management system. Going forward, civil cases, with limited exception, will be automatically presumed eligible for early referral to court-sponsored ADR, including mediation, neutral evaluation, arbitration, summary jury trials, and court-conducted settlement conferences. Of course, adopting early presumptive ADR in a court system as large and complex as ours is an ambitious undertaking. But by resolving most cases on the front end, we will reduce court congestion, conserve our limited judicial resources, and provide litigants with what they want most: cost-effective resolutions and better quality outcomes. Our massive ADR initiative is a work in progress, and as you can imagine, there are a lot of moving parts to it. But we are well on our way to accomplishing this transformational change in New York's civil case management system, and we are not looking back. In fact, 85,000 cases have already been referred to ADR statewide since the fall, and about 30,000 of the 61,000 cases which have gone through ADR reported reaching a full or partial settlement. That's 49% of the cases, half of the cases, and we're just getting started. All of our courts, from Supreme Court to Family Court to Housing Court, are in different stages of rolling out their ADR programs, each one of them based on an individualized assessment of local staffing, resources, needs, and conditions. Presumptive ADR has been rolled out in every county of New York City, starting with a major focus on resolving tort cases during what we are calling our blockbuster days, when large clusters of cases involving a single insurance carrier are calendared on the same day before a single judge who works to negotiate settlements between the parties. The blockbuster parts in Queens, Bronx, and New York County Supreme have consistently achieved outstanding settlement rates above 50%. Thank you to Judge George Silver, our Deputy Chief Administrative Judge for the courts inside New York City, for leading our New York City ADR effort. Thank you, Judge Silver. Outside the city, we are also off to a great start with ADR implementation led by Deputy Chief Administrative Judge Vito Caruso, my mentor 18 years ago when I became supervising judge in the 9th Judicial District. In Nassau and Suffolk counties, presumptive ADR has been enforced since October, and ADR sessions are being held every day of the week. In Nassau, customized ADR plans have been implemented for nearly every type of civil case, and the Supreme Court alone has referred over 5,600 cases to presumptive ADR since October 2019. And we want to thank Judge St. George, who was not able to be here today. He's busy doing ADR, for leading the way. In Western New York, the 8th Judicial District, led by Administrative Judge Paula Ferraleto, long a leader in using ADR, settled 55% of their referrals last year. That's extraordinary, and we want to thank our judges and staff in Western New York for their great work. Individualized district-wide formats are the key to the success of our statewide plan. And our administrative judges, kudos to every one of them, have taken great care to work with their colleagues on the bench and the local bar to achieve that goal. And in support of that individualization, we have created a statewide infrastructure to assist and facilitate integration of ADR into local court operations. We created new programming to track our progress and efforts across the state. We have trained over 1,000 judges, court staff, and outside attorneys as ADR neutrals, and continue, along with our bar associations, to recruit more neutrals. We are collaborating with existing mediation programs. We have appointed staff to coordinate presumptive ADR in every judicial district outside New York City and every borough inside the city. Again, presumptive ADR is a work in progress, and as we move forward, we are identifying the challenges that arise with any change of this magnitude, from recruiting enough neutrals to identifying appropriate space for ADR sessions in our courthouses, to every other issue that we have not or could not have anticipated. But here's the bottom line. We are changing the culture to make presumptive early ADR the accepted norm in our civil courts. And we are excited by the way in which lawyers, judges, and litigants are embracing our ADR model and recognizing the value of promoting early settlements and having a full range of options available, options designed to promote efficiency and cost-cutting and avoid protracted litigation. Thank you once again to Judges Silver and Caruso for leading this important transformation. Thank you. I know I'm not supposed to say this, but I want to move now to my favorite court. I move now to our family justice system, where families and children in need of critical services and finality have always been a high priority, because we know that these are the people who can least afford the uncertainty and hardships caused by systemic delays and inefficiencies. In this court, we are relentlessly focused on producing results. Last year, due to a number of innovations, all detailed in the written report, the cases pending over standards and goals in the New York City Family Court dropped by 17%. And we established new trial parts, yes, trial parts in the family court in Kings and New York counties, and very soon in Bronx County, in order to eliminate trials which take place on non-consecutive days over many weeks and oftentimes months, a cultural practice that unacceptably delays finality and amplifies the stress and trauma associated with these difficult and sensitive cases. Citywide, the number of trials continues to increase, and we will be doubling down on our efforts this year. Now, I turn to a grave and unsettling topic for all of us. We recognize that litigation involving children ranks among the most important, the most difficult, and the most emotionally wrenching matters handled by our courts. We also recognize that our justice system, just like the individuals who make it work, will never be perfect. But when children come to harm or tragically die from abuse, neglect, or maltreatment, there can be no greater failure for all of us. And when the life of a child is lost under unusual, suspicious, or intentional circumstances, we have a solemn duty and responsibility to examine all of the circumstances and events that led to the death of that child, and to identify and learn from mistakes or lapses that may have taken place, and put in place corrective measures to ensure that those circumstances are not repeated in future cases. Outside of the courtroom, child fatality review teams have been established at the state and local levels to examine the deaths of children in our communities. The teams focus primarily on the role of child protective agencies and the way in which they investigate and monitor the safety of children. Indeed, early in my first term as district attorney, with my partner, Commissioner Diane Atkins, who is seated in the third row. Diane, please show yourself. I led the creation of a child fatality review team that examined the unusual or suspicious death of every child under the age of 18 who died in Westchester County. Our team helped us investigate and understand the causes of our child fatalities and lead us to adopt systemic reforms to prevent future tragedies from taking place. It is important for the judiciary to do the same, to establish our own child fatality review process. I believe that whenever a child involved in the justice system dies, as happened most recently in the tragic cases of two little boys, one out in Suffolk County on Long Island and one across the river in Troy, we have an obligation to examine everything we did in connection with that case to determine whether and how our processes and procedures associated with the child and his or her family or guardians may have contributed to that unspeakable outcome. And we will do this not as a finger-pointing exercise, but as a responsible call to action. Today, I am announcing the creation of our statewide Child Fatality Review Team, led by Deputy Chief Administrative Judge Edwina Mendelson, a former administrative judge of the New York City Family Court. The team will consist of judges, lawyers, and other professionals with expertise in child welfare and family justice issues. The team will develop statewide best practices and protocols to guide the conduct of future child fatality reviews. As I said, the goal is not to second-guess any person or institution, but rather to examine what occurred and why a vulnerable child lost his or her life. And in this way, we best position ourselves to put in place the reforms necessary to correct identified gaps and deficiencies in services, strengthen our courts and child welfare systems, and prevent future fatalities, because every time a child dies from maltreatment, the public's faith in the ability of our courts to do our work is deeply shaken. And it is up to us to lead the way in ensuring that children are protected from preventable harm. Thank you, Judge Mendelson. This is extremely important work, and we look forward to the convening of the team. While each and every one of the initiatives highlighted in today's address is intended to strengthen public trust and confidence in the work of our courts, There are very few issues as important to public confidence as ensuring access to justice for all people. Over the last decade, under the leadership of my predecessor, former Chief Judge of the Court, Jonathan Lippman, and the guidance of Helene Barnett and the Permanent Commission on Access to Justice, New York has become the undisputed national leader in addressing the civil legal needs of low-income individuals. Our collaborative and multifaceted efforts, from legal hand community storefronts to court navigators to senior lawyers working pro bono in our Attorney Emeritus program, to the continued $100 million in public funding for direct grants to civil legal service providers, these efforts are having a definite impact on the justice gap. The numbers of unrepresented litigants in our courts continues to decline, and we are getting smarter and better at how we work. The troubling circumstances of individuals who cannot afford a lawyer to secure the essentials of life is not something we push off onto others. Our efforts in this regard go to the heart of our constitutional mission, and we thank all of you for the work you are doing. And I cannot resist the urge, before I leave this topic, to underscore how much more we will be able to achieve to expand access to justice for New Yorkers of limited means by simplifying our complicated, confusing, and difficult to navigate court structure. We have moved mountains to achieve historic levels of funding. We have worked hard to create, develop innovative pro bono programs. Countless lawyers have given generously of their time and talent. But what good is all of that if people we aim to help cannot get their cases through our courts in a timely, orderly manner? Court simplification is, at its core, about access to justice, and plainly, our reform proposal is the key to our ability to responsibly serve the needs of litigants who have no place else to turn. Now, as you might envision, at the heart of our Excellence Initiative and our expanded three-part vision for the future of our court system is the training and education of our judges and professional staff. Judge Juanita Bing Newton, Dean of the New York State Judicial Institute, and her very dedicated staff do an outstanding job of keeping our judges and court personnel current on the law while integrating the philosophy and goals of the Excellence Initiative into the more than 300 programs they present each year. Thank you, Judge Newton and your staff, for keeping us trained and focused on achieving excellence. And our commitment to advancing the knowledge and skills of judges, staff, and lawyers is not confined to the four walls of the Judicial Institute. A shining example of that commitment is the work that has been done by our New York Evidence Committee, co-chaired by former Court of Appeals Judge Susan Reed and retired Judge Bill Donino, to create the definitive one-stop guide to New York's prevailing law of evidence for the benefit of the bench and bar. With the expert assistance of Professor Michael Hutter of Albany Law School, the committee completed the task I asked them to undertake 3.5 years ago, and they have completed their task. I really should say they have completed their labor of love well ahead of anyone's expectations. This extraordinary group has collected and organized New York's widely dispersed law of evidence into a single, comprehensive, easy-to-access guide that parallels the structure of the federal rules of evidence. The guide is now available as a free resource for all judges and lawyers online on the court system's website. I strongly encourage you to access the guide, use it to your professional advantage, and tell your colleagues all about it. I want to thank the committee members for their service in producing this fantastic resource. And again, thank you to Susan Reed and Bill Donino for their commitment and scholarship. Thank you. Now, And finally, to our profession. Each year, more than 8,000 new lawyers are admitted to the practice of law in our state, a staggering number for a profession that enjoys the privilege of self-regulation, and one that I submit compels us to pay very careful attention to whether our new lawyers are acquiring the skills and values necessary to provide effective, ethical, and responsible legal service and counsel to clients. In New York, the Court of Appeals is empowered under the judiciary law to prescribe the qualifications for the admission of attorneys to the bar. The judges of my court take this responsibility very seriously. In 2016, the court adopted a rule requiring bar applicants to demonstrate that they possess the skills and values necessary to practice law competently and ethically. To help us implement this new requirement, our New York State Institute on Professionalism in the Law, consisting of lawyers, judges, and educators, led by the extraordinary work of Paul Saunders, who is with us today, has developed an absolutely superb handbook on legal skills and professional values. Last December, the Administrative Board of the Courts approved the handbook for use in our law schools, distribution to every new attorney at our bar admission ceremonies, and inclusion in Bridge the Gap CLE programs prepared for newly admitted attorneys. I want to thank Paul and the members of the Institute for creating this handbook that we know will help to guide new as well as seasoned practitioners in their calling, and will help us in our effort to foster skilled, competent, and ethical lawyers throughout the state. Please take a copy of the handbook on your way out. We have them to be provided outside the courtroom door. And to take a moment before I leave this topic, I do want to acknowledge the extraordinary contributions of Lou Craco, a founding member and the first chair of the Institute on Professionalism, a wonderful lawyer who dedicated much of his career to promoting awareness and adherence to the highest values of professionalism and ethics, and we will miss his work and his voice. And speaking of lawyer ethics and competence, our colleagues in the appellate division are charged with the important responsibility of ensuring the character and fitness of our admitted attorneys and of every candidate seeking to be admitted to the bar. Last fall, the State Bar, and President Greenberg leading the charge, raised an important issue regarding the application for admission to the New York Bar. The questionnaire inquires, among many things, whether a candidate has a mental health condition and has sought or received mental health treatment. After study, the question has been found to have an adverse impact on law students in need of mental health services. Students have avoided treatment for fear of the negative effect it may have on their bar admission. A number of studies have confirmed this deterrent effect, and a growing number of states have responded by modifying their bar admission applications. Our presiding justices, Rolando Acosta, Alan Shankman, Beth Gary, and Jerry Whalen, and their courts have responded quickly to the concerns raised, and I am pleased to announce that after a great deal of study and debate, the application for admission to practice as an attorney in New York is being revised. The amended application will no longer ask intrusive questions about a candidate's mental health conditions or treatment history. Instead, the application will focus on disclosure of behavior and conduct that is relevant to a candidate's fitness to practice law. The mental health and well-being of New York's lawyers is of paramount importance to us, and I am grateful to the presiding justices and their colleagues in the appellate division for addressing this issue in a speedy and responsive manner. Thank you for your leadership on that. Finally, last year on Law Day, I commented on both the disturbing decline in civic knowledge across our society and the danger we face from increasingly noxious attacks on judges that seek to politicize and undermine public confidence in our courts. The two are not disconnected. The State Bar expressed similar concerns. President Greenberg publicly urged the legal profession to assume a leadership role in promoting public understanding about the courts and the rule of law. Our mutual concerns have been echoed by no less an authority than the Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, who recently said, and I am quoting, "We have come to take democracy for granted, and civic education has fallen by the wayside. In our age when social media can instantly spread rumor and false information on a grand scale, the public's need to understand our government and the protections it provides is ever more vital." On May 20th, right here at beautiful Court of Appeals Hall, in partnership with the State Bar, we will bring together leading lawyers, judges, educators, policymakers, students, and members of the media to develop concrete strategies and programming for how the bench and bar can work together to strengthen civic education and knowledge in our schools. There is no better way to understand the role and functions of the three branches of government than to learn about them in school. And teaching New York's children the value of being civic-ready citizens will be the unique focus of this convocation in May. We know that our justice system and our democratic system of government are not self-sustaining. They do not run on autopilot. They require constant engagement, leadership, and above all, service. At a time when the rule of law is under pressure on so many fronts, I believe that we, as lawyers and members of the bar, we who have been specially trained and have sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution, are called upon to lead the way and to do our individual and collective part to keep our democracy on a steady course. The convocation will be one important part of that effort, and I want to thank President Greenberg, President-elect Scott Carson, who I know is here today, and my colleague, Judge Michael Garcia, who has agreed to represent the judiciary's interest for taking on this most important task. Thank you to all of you. It is a privilege and an honor to be a member of the New York State Judiciary, and it is the greatest honor to serve as the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals and of the State of New York. Last October, I accepted the Columbia Business School's highest award, its prestigious Deming Cup for Operational Excellence. I proudly accepted that award on behalf of all 16,000 judges and non-judicial employees of the New York courts. The university's selection committee recognized the progress we have made to ensure accountability and eliminate waste and inefficiency system-wide. In the history of the Cup, this was the first time it had ever been bestowed on a public service leader. That distinction was made possible because of the hard work and commitment to excellence displayed by the entire judiciary, our dedicated trial judges, our administrative and supervising judges, our presiding justices and associate justices, and of course, our outstanding professional staff, our court officers, and court personnel. I thank each and every one of you for your extraordinary efforts every day, all year long. And I add a very special thank you to my Court of Appeals colleagues, Jenny Rivera, Leslie Stein, Eugene Fahey, Michael Garcia, Rowan Wilson, and Paul Feynman for their prompt and prudent work to interpret, develop, and articulate the law of this state. And I especially want to express my gratitude to our absolutely fantastic Chief Administrative Judge Larry Marks. He is a true and dedicated partner in support of our mission of delivering the highest quality justice services to every litigant who comes through our courthouse doors. I want to thank you all for your attention, thank you for your service, and thank you for being here with us this morning. Thank you.
That brings our program to a close. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. You are all invited to a reception that's beginning momentarily over across the street at the State Bar. And just a reminder, on your way out, please pick up a copy of the Chief Judge's speech, our 4-year written report on the Excellence Initiative, and a copy of the Handbook on Legal Skills and Professional Values. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.